make meaning out of it and turn it around into a scenario where, they went back to school or they learned, and took some additional courses and kind of reinvented themselves. And that's really what's required sometimes when that stuff happens, is you really have to be open to reinventing yourself and seeing yourself be able to do something new.
Life doesn't always turn out the way we want it to. Millions of people get seriously injured or ill every year, putting their lives on halt. This may cause some of you to lose your jobs, your health, and more importantly, your sense of purpose. I believe that no matter how hopeless and helpless you might feel right now, God still has a purpose for you. This show was created to help you find that purpose, to inspire you to not give up, and to find ways to find fulfillment and make your life meaningful. It does not matter how dim your past or present looks like. As long as you are breathing, you can always find a way to say, "My future is alive." Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Christine Waters, and I hope you enjoy this show. Welcome to another episode of My Future is Alive. Now, before we get into today's interview with Michele King, I just want to touch base and talk a little bit about the two extremes that we tend to gear towards or be pulled towards when we're recovering from an injury. The first one is to feel guilty that you're becoming a burden to your loved ones who now have to help you and assist you with the things you previously could do on your own. Add to this the guilt of inconveniencing your employer and workmates who now have to produce the same amount of work without your help. I remember feeling this myself. I forced myself to go back to work way before I was ready. I also hated relying on other people, so I kept trying to drive when I wasn't supposed to. So please, if this is you, give yourself permission to rest and go through the process of healing. Let those around you help you. It's not only going to be a blessing to you, it's going to be a blessing to them as well. It's even going to create a deeper bond with them. Just focus on resting and getting better. Now, the other extreme would be to give up and feel like you can't do anything anymore. You feel worthless. And this may cause you to then rely too much on other people or just completely shut yourself out of the world. I've been there too. Having had so many setbacks made me feel like I couldn't do anything anymore. While this may be true in your case, there's always that small thing that you can do to help you get better. Focus on the thing that you can do, not on the things that you can't do anymore. Sometimes it may feel like using a spoon to dig yourself a tunnel to escape from prison, but doing something is always better than doing nothing. If you have to build your strength back up by starting with lifting 1-pound weights, do it. Just be patient with yourself and give yourself time to heal. In getting better, there's always that fine line of either doing too much or doing too little. Finding the balance is very important, is difficult, and is different for every person, but just be patient again. It may take a lot of trial and error, listening to your body. Keep in mind that you don't have to do this all by yourself. Utilize the expertise of the different therapists, physical therapist, occupational therapist, or whoever therapist or whichever therapist your doctor has prescribed for you. For me, I even had to use vision therapists. That brings me to our guest for this episode. Michele King is a 2004 graduate of Russell Sage College with a master's degree in occupational therapy. She has had over 15 years of education and experience with a specialty in hand and stroke treatment. She is also one of the owners of Physical, That's Fyzical. Physical therapy and balance centers both in Oswego and Watertown, New York. In their facilities, they also help concussion patients and a wide variety of major injuries. Michelle is a resident of Oswego, New York, soccer mom to two boys, and enjoys fishing with her husband on Lake Ontario. Let's welcome Michele King. Tell us a little bit about your story. What made you want to become an occupational therapist?
I knew I wanted to do something in the medical field, and I really wanted to be a surgeon at first. But I did a program called the New Visions program through Oswego Hospital, and I really, could see how much time, energy, and effort was going to be required if I went that route. And I was thinking long term when I had a family, was this going to be a viable solution for me? Was I going to be able to work and be there for, my children in the future? And to me, the answer was no. So I needed to shift gears pretty quickly from medical school to something that was going to be a little bit more schedule friendly. And I started looking into physical therapy, but really by default ended up with an occupational therapist for the day and kind of fell in love with the different things that she was doing. It was very, it was varied throughout the day depending on the type of patient she had. It wasn't really, row exercise. It was, she really was very creative in her approach to patients and was doing a lot of different things. And I get bored easily. So that's what kind of, I kind of pushed me into that direction.
And you've enjoyed it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've been practicing since 2004. So it's been something that the cool thing about the profession is you can kind of constantly reinvent yourself.
Right.
By doing continuing education and getting into another form of practice that you aren't currently in. And that's kind of the neat thing, because you really can't get bored. And every patient, even if they're coming in with a similar condition, is different and unique, and their body is different. So you have to come up sometimes with different approaches that are going to work better for that particular patient.
Right.
So, it kind of keeps you on your toes, but at the same time, it's a nice, schedule. I can work 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, and still be home in the afternoon to take care of my family and stuff. So it kind of works with life.
Yeah.
It's really nice because not all jobs, in the medical profession do that.
I've seen you work. You don't just deal with your own patients, you also deal with everybody else's patients, right?
Kind of sometimes. Yeah, it does happen that way where, somebody will pull you aside and be like, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And I do that with the other therapists too. Basically, have a lot of years of experience under their belt. We all work really well together. We all really respect each other. And what we bring to the table, which is nice. You don't always find that in every profession. And you don't always step into a situation. I work with people that are just really humble and kind. And I'm really blessed by that, because there's no egos. Everybody's in it really in our office to help the patient, and if we don't know something, we're going to look something up or ask for help.
As far as patients go, do you have like a sense of what is the most common things that they come in for? Like, what have you noticed?
We kind of have our niche. So, we do a lot of hand therapy, and we do a lot of concussion, and we do a lot of balance impairment, dizziness, vertigo. And we do quite a bit, of orthopedic anything, joint pain, any type of orthopedic surgery, whether it be a knee replacement or a fracture repair or a shoulder surgery. We kind of get the whole gamut for the most part. And that's cool, because it does, like I said, it keeps things interesting.
Keeps you on your toes.
Definitely.
So, going into the subject of major injuries, have you ever had a patient who's had to either stop working altogether because of their injury or were forced to switch careers because of their major injury?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I've had people that, were, so injured that they never could get back into the workforce. And then I've had people who, have had to kind of change courses or change jobs at their current job to accommodate for, changes in their physical abilities. All of the above. Yeah, definitely have had that happen.
Have you noticed if that's affected their recovery? And if so, how so?
Like their ability to get back into the workforce.
Right, like has it affected them psychologically and then therefore affected how they treat or practice the exercises or use the exercises rather that you guys give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on the individual, where they're at in their life and how kind of deeply rooted that role is within them. For example, I had a patient at one point in time where, they were closer to retirement age anyway, so they just took an early retirement.
Okay.
And their injury wasn't so debilitating that they weren't going to be able to enjoy their retirement. So, in that case, it wasn't devastating. But then I've had patients, where they're kind of in their prime and, they're doing more of a manual labor type of job and, experienced a significant injury and were not able to return back to that job. And that is devastating and life changing, especially if they can't get into a light duty type of scenario. Because, a lot of times if it's factory work, people may have 15, 18, 20 plus years in and be making a really good salary at that point. And so for them to replace a job like that is really difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any maybe like favorites, a favorite story or a few favorite transformational stories that say even if they had to switch jobs or stop working altogether, it still was like it gave them a better outlook in life, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of quite a few people that were able to kind of make meaning out of it and turn it around into a scenario where, they went back to school or they learned, and took some additional courses and kind of reinvented themselves. And that's really what's required sometimes when that stuff happens, is you really have to be open to reinventing yourself and seeing yourself be able to do something new. And a lot of that comes down to an individual's personality, honestly. If they don't like change, if they really struggle with putting themselves out there or, being uncomfortable, then that can be a real stumbling block to getting back into the swing of things and really redefining themselves in the workforce. Um, so I have definitely seen that happen. And when that does happen, it's always a win-win all around, because you're just thrilled that your patient is thriving. But I've seen people really get stuck. And this is where that, personality and perceptions play a big role, because I've seen people have substantial injuries that they've overcome, reinvented themselves, and gotten back into the workforce because they're really motivated to do that. And then I've seen people with what I would consider a less debilitating injury get completely stuck and not being able to see themselves in a different role, and therefore kind of hopeless and not motivated to pursue anything else. So, there's a lot of psychological factors that come into play when you have an injured worker, and they are trying or maybe not trying to return to work depending on their scenario.
What would you say to that person who's like stuck and just can't see?
We try to identify very early on in the rehab process. And a particular patient comes to mind right now. When we hear them say, I used to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. Or oh my goodness, I used to do this. I used to do that. I could do that before. Or talking about them in the past tense when they're in the middle of their recovery, we'll correct them and say something like, well, when you're able to do that again, mm-hmm. or, that type of scenario. And that's not giving false hope, because that's not what we do. We will say those things when we are pretty confident that the patient should be having a full recovery, because you can really psychologically get stuck in your disability. It's easy for us because we're on the outside looking in and we see patients, but when you're in a debilitating situation, it can feel like that it's going to be that way forever. And sometimes patients really are stuck or really are stuck. I'm talking about is more of the patient where they are, not at that point yet where they shouldn't be identifying more with their disability than with moving towards ability, but they are stuck in that I'm disabled and I'm going to be like this forever. And that's hard sometimes to get people out of that mindset, but that's some of what we have to do. And then a lot of times you are just pushing them to do things that they can do that they don't think that they can do. And then that really speaks for itself.
Do you think it helps for them to see beyond themselves? Like, I remember when I was kind of in a plateau and I could be up for 4 hours and then I'd have to lie down again. And then for I don't know how long, I don't remember. But when Charles, my nephew, was born and I got forced to have to babysit him, that helped me push myself to get up even when I don't feel like it. And I strongly believe that period of time, because he was there and I had to be there for him when Hazel was working, my sister, then it just forced me to get better.
Yeah, because sometimes you kind of can get into a rut of, I can't do this. And then, you can fall into okay, well, this is my ability. This is where I'm at. And, I think with your condition in particular, there's also a fear avoidance component to that. Because when you think that something that you're going to do is going to make you feel awful, there's fear and anxiety associated with that. And it does take a lot to overcome that. A lot, because who wants to feel awful? Nobody does. And so you're always like, okay, if I do this, I'm going to feel terrible. And so I'm just not going to do it. I can't blame anyone for that scenario. Because those are difficult shoes to be in, and it's hard sometimes to get over that hump, right. And we see that with, orthopedic things too, where, sometimes you'll literally have to say to a particular patient, you're not walking enough during the day. You are not moving enough. And I know it's uncomfortable and I know you don't feel well, but here's the deal. Tomorrow, 20 minutes of walking, because by next week, you're going to do 30 minutes of walking. And you kind of have to, lay the law down and push them, and help them to, identify with those objective goals is really more of what it is. Right. And it's good to tie it into function. Like, okay, you use whatever is important to the patient. You want to go to watch your grandson play soccer, but you can't walk right now, X number of feet. If you want to get here, we've really got to start working on this.
Yeah. Which makes your role as an occupational therapist and even the physical therapists very important because, like, for me, it was the first several months I would try to do something and then I'd have a setback, and that became a traumatic cycle that made me afraid to do things. So that the outside input of a therapist like you guys does help push us forward. So thank you for the work that you guys do. Have you now have you noticed a pattern for those who recover quickly and those that don't?
There's so many different variables when it comes to patient recovery. There really is. And a few are healing time, their current state of health that they come into you with, if they're, generally really healthy when they've been injured or had a surgery, their outcomes are better. Comorbidities, if, you have a patient who has a heart condition or diabetes or is overweight, that's going to impact their recovery. Definitely, how motivated they are to recover, pain tolerance, all those things really do kind of play into, what and how quickly a patient is going to recover.
So you have two amazing boys. You also wear the hat of a mom. So I'm curious, like, does your work, your profession, inform how you parent them, and especially when they get injured?
Yes. Um, it definitely does. And I can give you a lot of examples there, but we see weird accidents, a lot. And you hear someone's narrative and their story of how they were injured or crazy things that have happened. And you see trends in injuries all the time. And it definitely makes you want to be more, informative with your kids of the potential for different injuries. And so, helmets on bikes, helmets on anything moving, that should be the gold standard for every parent, but, it carries a lot more weight when you see the freak accident of, a kid that jumped on their skateboard to go down the road 2 feet and fell and hit his head on the curb and is now has, a TBI that's significantly impacted his ability. So you see those freak things and you try to not be, a psychotic parent, but to really, inform your kids about how to best take care of their bodies because, there are certain things like brain injuries, for example, that, it will be by the grace of God if you come through a brain injury with literally no impairments. Some of that stuff is really difficult stuff when it happens. And we've seen, a lot of ATV accidents with, teenage kids and, a lot of fractures that occur from that. A lot of motorcycle accidents. And I'm not anti-motorcycle, but the problem is a lot of times it's the car that is the problem. It's not the motorcycle driver. And so you see those trends. So yeah, you do. It does influence how you talk to your kids and how you parent them and how you teach them to take care of your body. And
So if there's a parent listening right now that's has a kid that's recovering from a major injury, what would you advise them, or any words of encouragement for them?
I would say to always try to, instill hope and always try to, facilitate an atmosphere where the child can be as independent as possible, whether it be, setting them up for an activity or, helping them to be successful without enabling is really, really important when you are trying to get or to facilitate, recovery.
So don't baby them too much.
Don't do too much. That's right. Don't do too much for them. It'll definitely delay things.
And what about for adult patients that are recovering? What would you say to them?
I would say definitely do what the medical professionals are asking of you. It's a two-way street. There is, we can be the smartest therapists, most motivated to help you, but if on your days off from therapy you're not doing your part, then you're not going to have as good of outcomes. If you're not following up with your physicians, taking your medications like you're supposed to, you really have to be on the ball and doing every little thing that you can be doing for yourself, even down to getting adequate rest, quitting smoking, not drinking. All of those things play a huge role in recovery. So if you're in that battle, all of those little things make a huge difference for someone who's recovering from an injury.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And finally, so for other therapists, do you have any words of guidance, especially to new ones that don't have much experience yet? How should they approach their patients with debilitating injuries?
It depends on, where the patient is at in their recovery. And my whole kind of philosophy with patients, and it's backed up definitely in the occupational therapy frame of references, you want to give hope, but you also want to be very real with your patient and be communicating to them what is actually going on with their body, and know when to kind of flip that switch into less of a restorative approach to therapy and more of an adaptive approach. And basically what that means is, you kind of wear two hats. If you're recovering from a stroke and you can't write, and we've been working on trying to get you to be able to write, with a basic pen for 6 months, and it doesn't seem to be working, we might need to incorporate some type of adaptive equipment. And so that's more of an adaptive approach. You need to know when to kind of shift gears with patients and help them to come to the realization that, they're not going to be able to do something the same way, but it doesn't mean that they can't do it. Or, there are times when patients just can't do something anymore. And so, helping them process through that is also part of it, because when you have a serious debilitating injury and you lose an activity that you love, it's a tough thing for people. So, just a lot of times listening and, helping them to kind of even brainstorm through something else that they might be able to do that they could enjoy, is helpful. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you for the words of wisdom. If anybody listening would like to acquire services, what's the best way for them to reach you?
yeah, they can call my office at 315-207-2222. That's Physical Therapy and Balance Centers, and that's where they can find us.
Okay. And are you guys doing in-person therapy right now, or?
Yep. So everyone is wearing masks, and we're temping everybody at the door, and nobody's really sitting in the waiting room. They're calling in advance, and then coming in, and we're social distancing people. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Shelley. I really appreciate it. I hope the conversation I had with Michele King was not only informative, but also very encouraging to you. I do want to give us a few takeaways from what she said. Number one, don't give up hope when you're recovering. Number two, be willing to reinvent yourself and have a positive outlook on your new condition if it so happens that you won't be able to go back to your previous profession or the previous things that you used to be able to do. And finally, let's not forget to wear the proper head protection for outside activities like biking, skateboarding, even riding motorcycles especially. I'm going to leave you with this song that I wrote that I hope will be your anthem, saying that my future's alive. God bless you, and I'll talk to you soon. A prodigal from birth. lost in every step. My mind was confused till scales fell off my eyes. True love, I realized that this wretched soul was found by you. This wretched soul was cleansed by you. Given a new name like a newborn, I am no longer my own, I'm yours. Oh, oh, oh. Rotten inside out, my life had no worth. Beaten up with lies, I was starving for truth till scales fell off my eyes. True love, I realized this wretched soul was found by you. Oh, this wretched soul was cleansed by you. Given a new name like a newborn, I am no longer my own, I'm yours. Oh, oh, oh. The good shepherd's child, my future's alive. This life is so sour but sweet with your showers of love. Yes, with your love this life's a piece of pie. My future's alive, my future's alive, my future's alive. My future's alive, my future's alive, my future's alive. My future's alive, my future's alive, my future's alive. This wretched soul was found by you. Oh, this wretched soul was cleansed by you. Given a new name like a newborn, I am no longer my own. Given a new name like a newborn, I am no longer my own, I'm yours. My future's alive, my future's alive, my future's alive. My future's alive, my future's alive, my future's alive. Don't forget, if you'd like some free music sent to your inbox, just go to christinewaters.com/free. That's christinewaters.com/free. Also, I am looking for transformational stories in regards to major injuries. So if you have one, or if you know of someone you'd like me to interview, please tell me about it at music@christinewaters.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and any review is greatly appreciated. God bless you. Until next time.